Welcome to the South by East podcast, where we discuss culture, the scriptures, and everything in between and how they impact South East Topeka with your co-hosts, Jonathan Sublett and Braille Watson. Welcome to another episode of the South by East podcast, and I'm your co-host, Jonathan Sublett, and today I have a very special guest with me. We have a Kansas native, a second-generation Mexican-American, a Washburn alum, because, Washburn has been winning on this season of the podcast. We have a Navy Reserve veteran, a Topeka Police Department veteran, a Safe Streets co-founder, a multiple-term councilman, and first-term mayor. Welcome Topeka's favorite son, Mayor Michael Padilla.
Wow, I don't know if I can live up to all that, Pastor. Thank you for the welcome and the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're glad to welcome you on as we get ready to close out Season 1 of the South by East podcast. And as we brought you on for the finale, we had this planned out. We wanted you to come and round us out because we've had some tremendous guests on this season. But we covered a variety of topics all about how things interact with and impact Southeast Topeka. And I want to ask you a couple of questions as we walk through those episodes. But I want to start off with, because one of our goals here is to educate. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions about politics to help educate us on the thing. So we just finished what is known as the midterms because they happened midway through the presidential 4-year term. You were not on the ballot for re-election in the midterms. So what does life look like for you during election season when you're not on the ballot?
It's very different because you have a little more time to sit back, look and analyze everything that's going on, because when you're in the election, you're focused on just your campaign as much as you can be. Certainly, you look at your competition or your other candidates and kind of make sure that you're covering issues that they're bringing up. Yeah. But when you're not in the election run that day, it's more comfortable. You're not the target. And what I use that opportunity for too is to reach out to those candidates that I support and offer my assistance in any way that I can. And I did that during the midterms, and I feel comfortable doing that. Yeah. Some people worry about that. They say, well, you know what, you might get yourself in trouble when it comes up for your reelection. I said, well, I have to be honest. I have to tell people who I support, who I think is helping this community in the state of Kansas.
I appreciate that. Where that shows a lot of integrity on your part to say it is what it is, and I'm going to be who I am. Yep. And if they vote for me, then they vote for me, and if not, then it's time for me to do something else. Yep. I appreciate that. And one of the things we talked about is all the data says on the year that it's a presidential election, you get a lot more votes than during a midterm election. Unless, like, this year was a little bit strange because we had some different things like abortion and different things that nature on the ballot that impacted things. But just national, local politics don't always equal out. How long is your term, and how long are the terms of our council people? Because I know a lot of people know about the 4-year for president, but if you'll just help, make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure, and I want to clear up a couple things. Yes. And I appreciate the introduction. Yeah. But in a sense, you were correct in saying multiple terms because this is a second term on the council. Yes. But my first term was as district representative for District 5. Yes. And then during that time, I served as deputy mayor as well. Yes. And then I ran for mayor. So I am my multiple term on the governing body. And all of us serve a 4-year term, council or the mayor. Okay. And we do that in an election that kind of offsets so that in one election, all the even-numbered districts run, and then in the next election, all the odd numbers run. So that way there's some retention of some of the council, about half of the council.
And that's something big that you just mentioned. If you look at it, and I was looking at this, the city of Topeka has got a new mayor, new city manager, the deputy mayor or deputy city manager just announced his retirement.
Yes.
We had a new police chief, new fire chief. We've had a tremendous amount of turnover in leadership, and so having you step over from council, the multiple terms deal, have some stay there, the deputy mayor, some other council people there, has helped kind of stabilize some things as we've transitioned through time.
Yes, I think so. I think it's important to have that continuity of effort.
Yeah.
And having that change might seem disruptive for others, but those people who have come into those new roles have been participatory in a lot of what we've been doing anyway.
Yeah.
So there's not much to bringing them up to speed, as it were. So it is important to have that that half of the body who stays there and knows what's going on and really sees an opportunity for those who come on board in a second election or brand new ones to be able to help them get a feel for the work of the city, because it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, and then one of the things that you know, like you said, I'm not in politics, so I get to watch.
Yeah.
And like Councilman Kell took your previous district where you were councilman at, but y'all maintained a good relationship.
Yeah.
Even when you beat him in the election, y'all maintained a good relationship. And now when he steps onto the council, like he's on the council now, and you're mayor, it enables there to be a working relationship because of that. Just speaks of, I believe, of your character and how you conducted yourself. And so I just want to thank you for that.
You're right. It's important to maintain those respectful relationships.
Yeah.
Here just recently, I ran into another gentleman who was a candidate for mayor as well. I can mention him by name. I don't think he'll mind. Daniel Brown.
Okay.
I ran into him at the studios out at WIBW. He was promoting a fundraiser for his group. And we got to visiting and talking, you know, while we ran for the same office, we were visiting and talking, and I asked him what he was doing to keep himself busy now. So he told me, and I said, well, you know, you expressed an interest in serving the city. You ran for mayor. I said, is there anything else you'd like to do that I can help you with? I said, look at our city commissions and council committee members, and if there's something that you have a passion for, let me know. I will move your name forward. So, you know, if people have done that, I think it's important not to see them as opponents, but people who had the same interest and still, if they want to, can serve in some capacity. Yeah,
and I think Councilman Kell spoke about, you placed, like when you won, you placed him on some commissions for stuff, and he turned around and did the same thing for someone who ran against him in the race. And so I believe you're building a legacy of a different way of doing things than what we see, which kind of goes into, so midterms finished, we're going to have a divided Congress, right? It looks like the Republicans are going to be leaders of the House, and the Democrats are going to be leaders of the Senate. And so that matters in some different things. And so, like we're saying, we're still trying to make sure that everyone is on the same page and rise together as we go forward. And so we know about the president getting a cabinet. Does the mayor get a cabinet? And if so, what does that look like?
It's not so much of a cabinet, because in the mayor's office, as his, I guess, or her cabinet would be the deputy mayor and the city council, in a sense. They serve in that capacity because the city manager handles everything else, all the operations and so forth. He stays out of policy, and he makes sure everything gets done, where the primary role of the council and the mayor is to set policy and to give direction to the city manager. So in a sense, we work as a cabinet, but it's different in that they all have their separate interests and goals and initiatives. My role, I see it, is to help each one of them in any way I can. And I think that's the best way to do it. That's why I like local government. Those fences that keep people from each other aren't practical in local government.
Yeah.
It's just too small.
We still have to do life together.
That's right.
And so, you mentioned something there. You mentioned how the city manager and the deputy city manager serve at the will of the mayor. What percentage of the city government changes over with an election?
Locally, for us, that's a minimum.
Okay.
It's very minimal. And I have that experience that I worked for the state of Kansas for a while.
Okay.
I was the chief enforcement for the Department of Revenue for 10 and a half years. And when I came on with one governor.
Yeah.
And then that governor lost the election and a new governor came on board. And everybody around me where I was working, they felt that change. My direct report, he was let go like 2 days after the election. Other people were let go for the political change.
Yeah.
And for a while, it was kind of a joke from where I was, because everybody who worked for me and that staff then, they would say, well, he's a dead man walking. He's a dead man walking. It's just a matter of time before he leaves. But fortunately for me, I think about 3 to 4 months into the new secretary, I got called to the office, and I figured, well, this is the opportunity for them to thank me for my time and wish me well in my future endeavors. Went in and talked with him, and he told me that he had taken a little bit of time with me because he wanted to make sure he didn't jump the gun. He talked to other department heads and some of the legal staff, and they said, you know, we've been working with the chief for a while, and we think you ought to just leave him in place and let him continue to do his job. So he asked me if I wanted to stay, and I said, sure. So initially what was a 4-year commitment became 10 and a half years.
Yeah.
So I was able to bridge that changing of the guard at the state level. And so I know how it can affect people's lives overnight. Yeah. At the local level, that just doesn't happen near as much. Yeah. Now, there are some people who will say that either the department head has been moved to a different assignment because of a difference in direction stuff, but that's very minimal.
That's more of a structural change than a changeover kind of deal.
Yeah.
So like recently, Sylvia Davis got a promotion.
Yay!
Yes, yeah, I'm a fan of hers.
Yes.
And then there was some movements in public works and different things of that nature.
Yes.
And so, but that's more of a structural change, and that could happen at any time.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I want to transition a little bit here. In episode 2, we had then State Treasurer Lynn Rogers on, and we asked him the following, and I want to hear your input on these. The first thing, one of the things we asked him was, what are the greatest financial challenges for families in Topeka currently and in the next 5 years, in your opinion?
I think, at least for what I see that from the mayor's office and from the council's input as well, is the ability for families to find affordable housing and provide that, as well as the basics of health care, nutrition, and education. I mean, and all of those are primary. If we don't address those, not just individually, but as a group, we hurt our population and we hurt our community. So that's the biggest challenge, and because of financial changes in the world with the inflation rates and so forth, there are a lot of people who are just living right on the edge. You know, all it's going to take is one bad surgery or one accident or some medical thing that is going to throw them off that edge.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I have to get iron infusions, and I went in to get. I have to get them in batches of 3. And I went in and I had insurance and I thought everything was good because before they were paid for. And this time my insurance denied all of them. And they said they blamed the denial on a surgery that I had 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
And they said, because of the surgery you had 20 years ago, we think that's linked. Now, my doctors didn't put that was the cause of it or anything else. They just saw it in my file, my medical history. And so now we're having to fight the whole deal because those are thousands of dollars that I, as a pastor of a small church, would have to find. And so now we're having to fight the whole deal because those are thousands of dollars that I, as a pastor of a small church, would have to find. And so now we're having to fight the whole deal because those are thousands of dollars that I, as a pastor of a small church, would have to find. to cover all those expenses out of pocket.
Yeah.
That was an instant change that I just didn't predict.
Yeah.
And so that comes at a burden to a family.
Yeah.
When you have things like that happen. And then seeing those problems, how is your team attacking those problems? And what are you doing to help prepare for the storm and to weather the storm that we're in and prepare for the future?
Okay. Well, there are a lot of different approaches. Yeah. I think one is that we have to make sure that when the city is on good financial ground, so that if we have that need arise, that we have a reserve. Yeah. And the city of Topeka has a good reserve fund, but we want to leave it alone. Yeah. We want to leave it alone because it's there in case of really dire emergencies. And those could happen tomorrow. We could have a freak tornado in Topeka, Kansas, and everything would be upturned. Yeah. So you have to leave that alone as much as you can. And the city has done a good job of building that reserve over years. In fact, there have been conversations sometimes that, well, maybe we ought to dip into that a little bit and use that for some good. Well, it's tempting to do that, but once you start doing that, even in your own household.
It gets easier every time.
Yeah.
Right? Everything becomes an emergency. Everything becomes a good reason to dip into it.
Well, we've had that at state level, the Bank of KDOT. Yeah. That was part of the election campaign conversations. You start pulling that out of that division, before you know it, that money is not there for you when you need it. Yeah. So what we have really tried to do is, as much as possible, support the work that you do and other groups who are passionate and able to do a small piece here, there, and everywhere that supports those needs of the residents, so that while we can't give you a chunk of money, we can give you enough to keep working and to sustain your work. Yes. Your work inspires others to help join you, so you have the multiple resources that come to you, hopefully. Yeah. And so that way, what we might be able to afford only 3 or 4, we're more able to afford 10 or 12. Yeah. And so I think being judicious with the funds that we have available, like we did most recently with the ARPA funds, that was a struggle. Yeah. I really have to commend the citizens of Topeka who saw the opportunity, who came forward, and we had so many applications. Yeah. And then I have to really compliment our deputy mayor, who served as the chair, and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and Councilwoman Nager. Because I've sat on those grant committees before, and you don't want to say no to anybody, but you can't say yes to everybody and give them enough to make it meaningful for their work. Yeah. So I think what we've done as a city to show that we support those kinds of nonprofit organizations and organizations like yourself that are making a difference is what we can do to prepare for when the bad times come. Because so there will be fewer people affected at a lower level. We'll all get affected one way or other. I'll be affected just like everybody else. Yeah. I'm a retiree. I live on a fixed income. Yes. And so that changes too, just like everybody else.
So some of the housing that we're designing right now, actually through Cent, is actually targeted at the aging in place retiree. We're designing specific housing for that part of our community because we know that Kansas is having trouble losing retirees. And so we're trying to address that need in our community. But you mentioned something earlier that there's some people that's right on the edge. And one of the sayings around kind of some of the things that we're saying says that when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. Uh-huh. And I don't think this just pertains to families of color, but also low socioeconomic families. How can we walk beside our most vulnerable to help them prepare for what we see coming?
Well, I think we have to be honest with them for the first thing. I've said in Topeka that I really do believe that there's hope in Topeka because we have so many private organizations that are concerned about our welfare. I think we have to be honest and say, well, things are great and you don't have anything to worry about. What we need to be able to say is, these are areas that we're needing more attention to. And how can you tell us but the best way to make the most positive impact in your life. Because they know better than we do. I mean, I can say, Pastor, I'm going to give you this, and I hope you can use it well. But that may not be the thing you need at the time.
One of the things we say is proximity matters. And we say that the people closest to the problem always have the best solutions. And so that's why, my whole staff for the church lives in this neighborhood, because proximity matters. Just this week, I had 2 different groups drop by and want to deliver Thanksgiving meals to people in the neighborhood. And I was trying to, in a nice way, tell them, man, we really appreciate this, but really at Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's an overabundance of people wanting to deliver meals. I said, in the summer, there's a lot of families that still need to eat.
Yeah.
There's at spring break, there's a lot of families that still need to eat. And if we could spread some of this out, and I said, there's organizations that if you want to just do something at Thanksgiving or at Christmas, there's organizations that are set up here that do community meals. We just threw our farmers market here that happened, our scent market that happens here on 2nd. We just did discount boxes where families can make their own meals.
Oh, wow.
That just happened, on the 2nd Saturday of the month. And I'm like, I'm not trying to turn you away or be Debbie Downer on you. I'm just saying that another organization that does that's their niche, they can really expend those dollars that you're wanting to spend. Because a lot of times we get a lot of restrictions hey, I just want to set up a table and I want to be here for 30 minutes and I want to hand out this. I'm like, that really doesn't work for the families. I said, we're transportation desert.
Yeah.
So you want all these families to arrive at this certain time and be here because this is most convenient for you. But I said, we really try not to walk beside our neighbors in a way that's most convenient for us, but what's most convenient for them.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying, is just looking at our approach and making sure we're taking an approach that most dignifies and is most efficient for those that we love and care for and want to walk beside, rather than what's most efficient for us.
Yeah. So. Often you probably hear, doing this will make you feel good. I don't know that that's the right approach to it for me. It's not about making me feel good, okay? I'm supposed to be doing it because I know that there's a need and I help where I can. And regardless of how it makes me feel, I want to be able to help there. And I think that's where sometimes we get off on the wrong foot. And I don't mean to be critical of those charitable efforts, but I don't want to be just feeling good. I want to be doing good.
I mean, you hit something on the head. I think one of the good questions to ask yourself is, would I still do this if no one ever found out that I did it?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think if you're doing something because it makes you feel good, then you're actually using the people who you're supposed to be helping. Mm-hmm. And that's I just think that's a terrible thing to do. And so it's one of those deals where when you start looking at it saying, I'm doing this because this is the right thing to do, and I have the means to do it.
Yes.
So I like, even my role here, I say there's nothing wasted in my life. I was a former chemical engineer, project manager. I use all those skills here. I see that there's nothing that is wasted about my life and my experiences. Me growing up in poverty, me growing up with a single mom, all those different things feed into, man, I have the means to know and understand and do, and so I do. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't do this for some pat on the back, right? No. I tell people if I wanted to be rich or really wealthy, I would have stayed in engineering.
Yeah.
Right?
We need a lot of those.
I'm not making it as a pastor. I'm going to tell you that it's not happening right now. Yeah. And so that's one of the deals, which I'm going to throw us to a break. We're coming up on a break here. I'm going to throw us to a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about something that I know comes up a lot, because I think you used to be a part of JADO before you transitioned to mayor. Uh-huh. And I know that the Q1 of 2021 report from JADO said that the average Shawnee County citizen experiences 4.2 bad mental health days a month. Mm-hmm. So when we come back from break, I want to talk a little bit more about just mental health in our community and how that's affecting us, and just get some of the mayor's thoughts on that. We'll be back in just a second on the South by East podcast.
Are you interested in podcasting, audio, or visual media and just don't know how to get started or take your content to the next level? Then Studio 104 was built just for you. A fully functioning audio-visual podcast studio, industry-level equipment at an affordable price to help you make that album you always wanted, start that podcast, or even share the story of how your business is impacting the community. Book your session along with a free consultation today at www.fellowshiphighcrest.com/studio104.
Welcome back to the South by East podcast, and we're here with our special guest, Mayor Padilla. And before the break, we mentioned about the Q1 2021 JADO report that talked about the average Shawnee County citizen experiences 4.2 bad mental health days a month and 3.7 bad physical health days a month. So that's like a week every month of bad health for the average Shawnee County citizen. Where does the mental health crisis that we're experiencing rank in your list of priorities for our city?
You know, it became a concern for me years ago when the facilities that we had here in Topeka, like the Topeka State Hospital and supportive facilities, were done away with the explanation that was not necessary because there were enough safety nets in the community that was going to pick up those needs for the people who had been serviced by that hospital. And that's just, I don't know where that faulty thinking came from, because at that time there just weren't any safety nets per se. I think out of necessity, the Shawnee County and Topeka has tried to bring some of that into place. We still don't have enough resources for a city our size, for a county our size, to meet the needs of our community, because I too many times see that some of the incidents that we have are based on mental health struggles. And if we were able to treat those mental health problems in a more efficient way, then we would be serving our population and the public in a much better way than we are now. I get frustrated with folks who want to use a mental health condition as excuse for problems, because it's not an excuse; it's a reality. It's no less of a reality than if, for some reason, I was to lose an arm or a leg in an accident. It's something that you have to acknowledge. It's something you have to work for. You have to, as a person, for something like that, you have to rehabilitate. You have to adapt. Well, mental challenges are no less different, except for that oftentimes they're not recognizable immediately. And I think the work that NAMI does is important. And I think the more that we acknowledge that it has to be a focus beyond just the mental health providers, but in everything that we do, even in the workplace, you can notice things and you can understand that there are needs.
I mean, you're hitting it. I don't know if you know this, but I believe I learned, and this to be accurate, that Vallejo is the only 24-hour facility in the state of Kansas that takes inpatients 24 hours a day. Think like in the whole state. Like, so we're treasured to have Vallejo in our community. And then there's no place that takes minors, and so the facility that Family Service and Guidance Center is building will be the first to do that. And what you're saying, like, it can't just be so like a part of what CENT does, we have a mental health arm, and then as a church, you know, we have sacrificed some things to where now, as a church, we have a team of mental health therapists that we have kind of on retainer that we can access for people connected with us. We're looking at different ways of approaching ministry, from a more holistic approach to continually involve the social emotional health in everything we do, because we're about the health of the whole person. And so we're even wanting to set up some stuff where people that are in our congregation, when they get ready to volunteer and they think about that, they can sit down with somebody to really assess just to be aware of triggers in their life and what's going on, and is this the right time? Because more than we want them to be serving in those roles, we really want them to be healthily serving in those roles.
Yes.
And so we want to give them an opportunity to sit down with somebody to help them assess, is this the right time for me? And it's not about us wanting to say, like, no, don't serve. That's not what we're doing. But we're saying we want to see you enjoy serving more than anything and be healthy in your serving. And so we want to make sure to give you the resources to do that. And so we've sacrificed in some other areas financially as a church in order to be able to provide that for people connected with us, because we just feel like that's so important. So in episode 4, we talked to Delmetris Herron, who is a local realtor. And we asked her about just the ever-changing and erratic real estate market right now. And you brought up just the cost of housing. You know, in 2020, the city of Topeka got the results of a housing study for the city back. And it said that the city of Topeka needed to invest $53 million a year for the next 10 years to close this housing gap. And that same 2021 quarter 1 JADO report said we had about a 25,000 house shortage in the city. How is your team with limited resources working to close that gap?
You know, that's a real good question.
Yeah.
I want to bring in an example. As part of a group of people doing the inner city visits, we went to Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were on that trip or not.
I was not.
Okay.
I was not.
Well, they had several different tracks that you could take, and I took the track where I would go meet with, I think there were 4 or 5 NIAs. And they were in what they called Old Chattanooga. Apparently, as I got some of the history, that section of the town was primarily people of color. Yeah. They had a good community. They had retail, groceries, all that other stuff. Anyway, changes in building codes, I think changes that came about in lending practices. Yeah. Started to diminish the prosperity of that area. Yeah. And so it became different. It became, I hate to say it, like the old, what you would think of in the South. There was the pool for just the African Americans, and the baseball diamond just for the African Americans. And so they didn't get a lot of resources for them, and they started to have that problem with housing as well. The housing started to deteriorate and go in disrepair. But they introduced me to a young man there who was kind of like Dell's husband in real estate, and he was experienced in some construction, and he was a young entrepreneur as well. And so kind of like what Manny does, what they would do is they partnered with the NIAs, and they would identify properties that were in condition so that maybe they could be donated to a housing trust fund. And then they would purchase them, and then this young man would come in, and he would build a new home and build it so that it was affordable. Yeah. And he made some profit. He has to live. Yeah. But it was a reasonable profit. Yeah. And it was a real collaboration between the builder, the neighborhood that said, if you put it in this block, it will have the most impact. Yeah. And so they continue to do that still, as far as I know. And they have really rebuilt that area and neighborhood, and it's in a sense, it's them doing for themselves, but they saw that we have to do that.
Yeah, I'm smirking because the first funds that we got, public funds that Scent got, were in 2021 from JADO. We got $50,000 for housing. 20,000 of that went towards 2 rehabs that were done in 6 weeks. You know who did that?
Who?
Manny.
Really?
We have a strategic partnership with Infinite Properties Group. And so when it comes to our rehabs, we're able to move so fast because he can complete about 2 rehabs every 6 weeks for us. And so we're doing what you saw in Chattanooga, we're doing here in the Hi-Crest.
Yeah.
And so we're doing that very thing. It's happening. You didn't know it, but it's happening.
Well, that's good.
And so we got the home ARP funds, and part of that is going to be for rehabs. Mandy's going to handle all those rehabs for us.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be able to knock them out, and families are going to have dignified places to live.
Yeah, I've been to the homes. They're nice homes.
And so what you saw in Chattanooga is happening in your city.
Well,
and it's those strategic relational developments that's happening. And that's what a lot of people don't know, those kind of things. And they're wondering how it happens. And it's relationships. And it's being close to it and saying, how can we do this in a smart way that allows for the movement to go and that keeps his family taken care of. Yes, he needs to make some profit from it. And it makes it in a way that moves that we can actually do it for ourselves. And you know, there's no way that $20,000 is going to cover 2 houses, right? No. Like there's no way, right? So we got to do some creative things to get those things to work, and we're working a creative strategy on that. One of the things that's really interesting that's happening right now is Governor Kelly and her administration signed this deal for Panasonic to build a new battery plant out in DeSoto, right? And that's really close to the southeast side of town, right? What things do the city have in mind to try to lure some of those new workers? It was like 16,000 workers or something like that.
Oh, I can't remember.
And to come to Topeka and bring those dollars to Topeka so they don't all go the other way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, again, on another trip, we took to Northwest Arkansas, and we visited, I think, Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers.
I heard about that trip.
Yeah. Okay.
I heard about that trip. Yeah.
Okay. And the thing that I came away from on that trip was they're embracing regionalism as a way to complement things that happen in nearby cities. Yeah. So it wasn't so much that, let's say, well, Lawrence gets something and we don't get upset about it. We say, okay, but how do we help Lawrence in this effort? Do they need employees? Do we have trained employees in Topeka that we can, send there to get jobs, but still keep them in Topeka?
Yeah.
And that same, I think, effort has to happen with this DeSoto opportunity. That they're just not going to be able to fill that many positions without drawing from the region. I mean, that's good for the workers, but we have to make sure that we're making it possible for them to be able to get those jobs, use those dollars to help build the regional communities, Topeka included. Yeah. So we have to make ourselves attractive. And there have been some ideas and thoughts. I've often said that sometimes the best lure is that one that you can feel in your pocket. Yeah. Maybe if Pastor Sublett is working out there, but he maintains his residence here, as long as he maintains his residence there, there's some additional benefit that he gets from the city of Topeka so that he maintains his residence. Yeah. That can get complicated.
I think, but you know what? I think one of the smartest ideas I heard came from this really sharp guy that said that if we had a rail system that connected Manhattan, Topeka, and Lawrence. I don't know if you know who said that. Mayor Padilla. That idea right there, I think if we had something like that where people could easily go back and forth, that would be huge. If we had some targets on the southeast side and some of those different things where we started to build that where they knew like, hey, they can stay on this side of town and be close to getting to work, I think some of those things would help. And that goes into episode 5, we had Senator Christian O'Shea on. Okay. And one of the things I brought up to her, as I said, the average African-American kid that lives in Hi-Crest is slated at the age of 35 to have a household income of $19,000 a year. The average Hispanic kid that's living in Hi-Crest right now is slated to have a household income at the age of 35 of between $22,000 and $26,000 a year. That means that they grew up in poverty, They're going to live in poverty for their adult life, and their kids are likely going to live in poverty. How do we break that cycle?
Well, the quick answer that people usually go to is that the solution to that is having a higher education, and so that you're able to get into those jobs that pay more money.
But student loan debt.
Well, that's just it. As I said, that's the quick answer. But getting that education is not as easy for that same group of people.
Yeah.
And being able to afford it. And I think that, at least for the city of Topeka, for my part, I support higher education at every level. But I think less and less is it important for us to focus on a 4-year degree or a master's. We need technology. We need those skills sets that pay those high dollars, just like that we be needing in Panasonic, and to improve what we can do to show that the education is that route, but make it possible for that route to be achieved. And the more we can do to provide even those small scholarships, it gives people a chance to get their foot in the door in that educational system that will show them, if I can do just a bit more, I will be able to get myself further than what people expect that I can. I mean, they're not going to be able to compete for those jobs until they have the skill sets.
Yeah, and the other 30,000 out of that 50,000 that we got from JADO went towards a new build in the community. The students at Washburn Rural actually framed half of that house.
I saw that.
I really still have a dream. They've helped us frame 2 houses. We have one that's currently being built that they helped frame that one. I really still have a dream of being able to partner with Washburn Tech East, Highland Park High School, and have some of those students from the Washburn Tech East campus and Highland Park High School help us in what we're doing in the housing here in Hi-Crest, because they can walk by and see, man, I helped build that. And they can have a driving portfolio of work and come right out of high school with those skilled labor jobs that we're lacking a serious amount of skilled labor just all over in our economy. That I just think having some strategic partnerships where we found funding for that kind of thing, and the community gets housing, the students get the training, right? And you use those local institutions like Washburn Tech. I just think that could be a win-win-win for everyone.
I agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up. But Washburn Tech East, I was really glad that came into existence.
Yes.
We talked about that amongst a lot of our colleagues and stuff for years, and it finally came into existence. My hope is that we don't stop there, that we expand that. I'd like to see that become a campus with more opportunities for skills training and learning, and be that campus that Mike Padilla can go to if I had somebody to watch my kids. Well, we might have daycare there that can help take care of my kids while I get those skills. That we actually become kind of a community of generating that workforce and make it possible for them to attend without worrying about losing your ability to provide for your family at the same time.
I had that conversation back in 2020 with several companies, and I was pitching this idea of them trying to work with us to get second and third shift childcare in the city. Because I told them, I said, you're functionally divorcing some families. Because of the lack of childcare, you have one parent that's maybe working second shift, one parent working third shift. And so I said, how is that kid going to feel about your company? Because now they never got to spend time with their parents, and it might lead to a divorce, actual divorce. But you functionally divorced their parents because they're working different shifts to cover childcare because they don't have childcare. And people say, well, you get some family member. And I'm like, when me and my wife moved here, we don't have any blood relatives here, and we were paying more for childcare every month than we pay for our mortgage. And so I just think that's still a huge gap in our city that I'm hoping that we start to see some companies, maybe the county, city, whoever, partner with some existing child care agencies and say, hey, what would it look like to go 24-hour care?
Yeah.
Or like some of our workers who are working at some of these places now can have that as an option to have off hours child care as they roll into these different careers and everything.
Yeah,
So,
that's a huge obstacle for a lot of people. You're really right on target when you talk about that, you know. And it's in one way it's generational.
Yeah.
When I grew up, you know, it was the grandparents. You know, they took care of everybody, so you didn't have to worry about child care.
Yeah.
Well, my kids never experienced that. And then as they had their own families, we can take care of the kids and stuff. But now there are fewer grandparents available or family members to do that. And like you said, if you have a small family anyway, and there's always that concern for safety and welfare of the kids.
Yes.
So on the one end, it looks like an industry that could bloom, but you have to make sure that it's a safe industry.
The ones I saw, they have cameras where the parent can use an app on their phone to check on their kid at any time.
Yeah.
And so you can be innovative with it, but it's one of those things that helps overcome a hurdle, which, speaking of hurdles, episode 7, we had Melissa Goodman and Kristen Shook from Mirror Inc. on. And we were just talking about how Topeka can become a place that help people live lives of redemption rather than drowning in regret. Being previously incarcerated becomes a hurdle to taking your next step at times. What role do you see the previously incarcerated playing in our community's future?
You must be psychic. You know where I was before I came here today?
Where was that?
I was at the Shawnee County Reentry Simulation program.
So we're trying to work and partner with them. They're one of our church's major partners. Mirror is one of our church's major partners.
Okay.
And so we partner with them on a lot of stuff. And so
So we were there, and Melissa and I had a long talk.
Yeah.
And we went over several things. And my observation to her, and I said, take it for what it's worth. Mm-hmm. I said, everybody in here right now, you partner with. They provide certain aspects of resources that this population needs. Yeah. I said, and don't take this offensively. I said, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Okay? I find that sometimes when I'm doing something, I'm preaching to the choir already. They already know what.
Yeah, they're already bought in.
I want other people to hear the story. I want other people to be brought into it. I said, you're doing this simulation today. Let me ask you, have you ever thought about doing this simulation with the general public? Maybe a child care provider, a mental health worker.
I want to get it into our investment group. I want our kids in our investment group to go through.
Yeah, so that they can actually see that.
Yes.
And she goes, that's a good thought. I said, well, that means the choir gets bigger, okay? And they understand that when Mike Padilla, who's coming out of prison and wants to get a job, what my backstory is, how did I get there? Where do I want to go now?
Yeah.
But right now, sometimes it's just surface understanding, and that surface understanding isn't enough to accept that people want to get into the workplace. They just have to overcome those hurdles that keep them out of the workplace. And so I think reentry is essential.
Yes.
Because otherwise we're repaying it over and over and over again, and we're not getting anywhere.
Not getting anywhere out.
So it's weird that you bring that up. I mean, I said you must be a psychic that knew where, either that or you're getting my itinerary for the day, and so you're following me around. But it's so timely that I was there today, because that's an important aspect that a lot of people, I don't think, even give any second thought to.
Yeah.
And we have to have not just programs, we have to have people.
Well, and here's the deal. We give thought to it is because some of my closest friends have walked that journey. Some of my family members have walked that journey. And we, here at Fellowship Hi-Crest, we love those who have that story, and we want to walk beside them. Yeah. And so we invest in them, and we say, man, we're committed to you, and we're not going to hold your past against you. And also, man, we don't want you to use your past as an excuse for your future.
Yeah.
And so we love to walk beside people. I don't care what your backstory is. We love to walk beside people.
Yeah.
And when you love people, then you're with them for the journey, not just for the win.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. That's what reentry is about. You have to be with people for the journey and not just for the win.
Oh, yeah.
And that means enduring missteps and trials with them. And that a lot of people don't want to be in for that. They want to be in it for the win and for the photo op, but not for the journey.
Yeah.
So,
you want to be able to jump it and down. It's a celebration, but it's that stuff that goes on way before that celebration that's important, that gets you where you want to be.
Yes. And we all have those moments.
Oh, yeah.
And we all needed somebody to be there for us.
Yeah.
It might not have looked like being incarcerated, but we all had those moments.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take one more break, and then we're gonna come back, and we're gonna ask a couple more questions, and close out today's episode of South by East Podcast.
Are you interested in podcasting, audio, or visual media, and just don't know how to get started or take your content to the next level? Then Studio 104 was built just for you. A fully functioning audio-visual podcast studio, industry-level equipment at an affordable price to help you make that album you always wanted, start that podcast, or even share the story of how your business is impacting the community. Book your session along with a free consultation today at www.fellowshiphighcrest.com/studio104.
Welcome back to the South by East Podcast as we kind of start to wrap things up and come to a close here. But, episode 8, we had Ryan Vincent, that's the head of the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation on, and we were talking about housing and the statewide housing study that they did. And one of the findings from that is that the average house in Kansas is at least 60 years old. What does having such an aged housing stock do to the infrastructure and budget and staff of the city of Topeka?
Well, that aging stock, as you put it, means that you have citizens who are going to be put in a position of having to make the repairs and maintenance that bites into their available income. So the more that we can encourage new builds, the less of a stress that's going to be down the road for not just the original builder, but those who would buy those homes afterwards. I live in a house that is as old as I am.
Yeah.
They started building it in 1948 and finished it in 1949. So I know that it comes with a lot of maintenance needs and stuff. And so that inventory has to be updated as often as we can. Recently, we've looked at this parcel of land in the southeast part of the city of Topeka out in Shawnee County around, and that's going to hopefully bring a lot of new builds here. There's a couple other places in Topeka that I think are ready for that build, but we need to be judicious in how we build. We can't build all the time $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 homes. We have to build with an idea that there's the entry point that families need to have to get their start in owning a home. And those right now are harder and harder to find.
The study showed that also, and that's just the mindset. And there's a couple things you said in there, like this coming up year in 2023, Cent will be building what we think are going to be Topeka's first net zero homes, and we made the decision where with those homes that were these net zero homes, that a net zero house is a house that generates as much energy as it uses. So families' cost of living will go lower because their energy bills will go lower. They won't have energy bills for a good portion of the year. But we made the decision, we were looking at different building materials, and we made the decision based on the housing study, say, hey, we're gonna pay more to build this house because we want some of these metal roofs that'll last 70 years so that a family won't have to find the 10 grand or more to redo the roof, because it's gonna be a lot harder for that. And I said, well, I'd rather as a community developer, have to go find the money to pay for the steeper building costs so that the cost to maintain that home will be cheaper on the family who actually moves into it, because we might be able to find more here than they have in savings to replace this throughout the life of them living in that home. And so just thinking about things like that, and even one of the things that's a misconception is we say that CENT provides mixed income housing. So we look at some market rate housing, but then we provide some housing, rentals and new builds and houses for sale to those in the LMI community to try to keep a good, healthy mix in the neighborhood. And so our Fremont Hill development is just that. The west part, phase 1, is this 30-house subdivision where 20 of the homes will be LMI properties, and then 10 would be market rate units where anybody can move into. But 20 of them, that entry rate deal, they can just go in there and eventually own that home. And so I think you're hitting it right on of the need for that entry, the different types of developments that's needed, that good mixture, having to build homes. But then I hope that some of the people that are doing it are making decisions thinking long term. Because I said one of the things I learned, I was talking with Ron Vincent, is, hey, Kansans like to stay in the house for a long time.
Yeah.
So you need to be building a house. And I'm constantly asking the question, what decision are we making now that 20 years from now we're going to kick ourselves for making? So I say, let's make a better decision now so we won't kick ourselves in 20 years for the decision that we made today. I just think that's important. And then episode 9, right before you, we had Corey Wright and Kerry Higgins. I love that department.
They're rock stars.
I love that department and what they do. And recently, we're just talking about the homeless population, the work they do. I just got to spend 2.5, 3 months helping them write grants for the homeless population in our city. And so I got to know them better over that process and different things of that nature. And recently, the city created a program known as Equity Access Shelter that will enhance homeless services to ensure that all people receive rent assistance with a single point of access. Why is this such a massive win for the city of Topeka and not just the homeless population?
Well, what I think is that it's really brought an intentional effort to make the process of getting housing less complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, for people who move from house to house to house, maybe they're familiar with the process. But those who are struggling with maintaining those households or getting in their foot in the door, a lot of it is new to them, it's complicated, and having to go to one agency and then another agency and then back and forth frustrates them to the point where sometimes they just give up. What Corey and Kerry have done is amazing. The city of Topeka is very glad to have them as our employees because when you do this kind of work, I think I mentioned it before, you have to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
And they have that passion that's clear. I remember going to their 1-year celebration, I think it was. And the story kind of varies off a little bit, but it tells me how they're impacting our community. When I came in, there were a lot of people milling around, talking with each other, you know, and as usual. And what I usually try to do is visit with folks and say hi. But then I noticed this one younger woman sitting at one of the tables by herself, and nobody was talking. So I went over and sat down next to her, introduced myself to her. I didn't tell her I was the mayor. I just said, hi, I'm Mike Padilla. Glad when she told me her name, it's glad to meet you. I'm glad you came here for this celebration. What does this mean to you? And she goes, well, said, I'm a client that was served through this program. And I have to tell you that I had a lot of struggles. I had a lot of issues that were keeping me from being able to put a roof over my head and for myself and my children. But this program and the people in the program, not just the program, but the people in the program made me feel more confident in myself, made me feel good about myself. And right now, and she started to cry. She started to tell me the story of where she is now and where she is with her kids. And she says, I'm just so appreciative of what they do.
Yeah.
And so that told me worlds about how the work that Corey and Carrie are doing and how they impact people's lives in what might seem like small ways, but for those people that they affect, it's the world to them.
Yeah.
It's the world to them. So being able to make that process easier to get into, help, as the term you like to say, walk alongside these people as they move through the process. You know, not here's your form, fill it out and bring it back.
Yeah.
They're nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
They are part of that application. They feel like almost they make it seem like they're applying for their own home.
Yes.
I mean, they have that kind of commitment to it. And I think just last night at the council meeting, they talked about, I think they received something like 900 calls to come into the program, and they have like 300 plus already on their working list of how they're moving them through the program. That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and the thing is, and certainly not to my credit, when I came into the office as mayor, we looked at this issue and we looked at the process, and we saw that there were some gaps in our delivery to the point that we were looking at other programs to maybe try and fix that. And after some discussions, I said, you know, we have all the parts here. We just haven't put them in the right place. And we haven't coordinated what we already have. Because looking at this one program, it's no different than what we have in place. We just haven't coordinated it better. And once we let Corey run loose with it, they really brought everything into focus. We have all the tools. Now it's using them in the most effective way. And so I think what they have done to make access a less of a challenge has been commendable, and can't thank them enough for what they do.
Yeah. Mayor, what closing thoughts do you have for us today? What are you looking forward to as you look toward the finishing of your term?
Well, the reason I got into politics was not anything I had planned for. My first draw into it was that I knew that if there was a way that I could help move things along, because I was frustrated as a citizen, seeing things being talked about and talked about and talked about without any progress. So that's what drew me into running for council. And I use it as an example. I made a promise to myself that before I left council, White Lakes Mall was going to come down and we were going to get some development brought into the city of Topeka. And that's already happened. We have developers that are, and I say developers, multiple, that are coming to us because they've seen that the city has made a commitment and they want to move forward. So that made me feel really good. But all along the way, I was working with Greater Topeka Partnership and Jetto, and I see the enthusiasm for our community growing, that you know, we can do stuff if we just make ourselves commit to that effort. And so I was prepared to run for a second term as a councilman to continue that, because I felt like I got to keep involved. I really want to be able to help where I can. And so when the opportunity came, when Michelle DeLisa decided not to run, I still wasn't convinced that I wanted to be mayor. I'll be honest with you. It took a lot of soul searching and talking and getting a clear understanding of how it was going to affect my life as a retired person and my wife's life. And what I felt good about was the support that I received from my colleagues and from the community. And that's what finally convinced me to do it. And so I thought, well, if I can help in this capacity, maybe I can help even more so if I run for mayor, because it gets me out of the district, it gets me citywide looking at our issues, and so it helps me be able to do that better. And so my vision, as it were, is that when I leave office, I hope that a term that you used earlier today, nothing that I have been doing as an elected official has been wasted on the community. I want to be able to say that, like you said earlier, I was part of that. I was part of that. I don't need to be, I don't have to have my name on it, but I was part of that. I was able to say to myself that I work to keep this community moving forward. For the people who continue to live here, it will get better and better and better. And I'm encouraged by the enthusiasm that I see now with our Net Promoter Score raising as much as it did. That means that people who live here are talking more positively about their community.
Feeling different about it.
Yes, there is a difference, and they want to be a part of it. And so I guess what my vision is what everybody has a vision for. A better life in a community that you love and that you want to keep moving forward. I think the closing words that I used on our State of the Community presentation, in Topeka you can find hope, health, happiness, and prosperity. And if I can help that continue for the rest of my time as mayor, I feel like I've been able to help people in that way.
Yeah. Well, those are good words. And good words as we get ready to close out this season, season 1. And we're already preparing for season 2 for you. We have a special, we've been waiting to announce this. We're actually going to be partnering with the University of Kansas Center for Public Partnerships and Research for season 2 of the South by East podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into our state's educational system. We're calling the season Generations. And so I hope that you're ready for that as we just do a deep dive. And we have some tremendous things planned, but we're not going to leave you with just nothing between this season and the start of next. We're going to have some what we call interseasonal things that we keep you up to date with on our Facebook page, so you can catch us there. You can follow us there on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Music, Buzzsprout, all those different things. So you'll still be able to get to us and be involved. And we're even going to have a way where your voice can be involved in it season 2. So watch out for that as we come along. And let us thank Mayor Padilla for joining us for today to help us close out season 1. Thank you for being here and joining us in the intersection.
It's my privilege.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. And we're signing out for season 1 of the South by East podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the South by East podcast, where we meet you at the intersection of culture and community. If you enjoy the content and want to help us keep the wheels turning, please rate and review us on your podcast app. For more information on resources shared, check the show notes, and we'll see you at the next intersection. We out.